With centuries of kingdoms, duchies, religious and cultural differences and strife, Europe is packed with historical sites. And places like these are the result of the most destructive invention up until that time: cannons. My name is Sebastian, this is Oddworld. Medieval fortresses were usually built high or on hills to make it possible to rain down arrows on approaching enemies. But these straight and tall walls, curtain walls, proved vulnerable to cannon fire. After the invention of gunpowder in the 9th century in China, the first depictions of cannons appeared there in the 12th century. Spreading west across the Eurasian continent, they were widespread in Europe and the Middle East by the end of the 14th century. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 was a wake-up call. Its massive walls were seen as impenetrable. But Sultan Mehmed II used his powerful cannons to breach even these walls, proving medieval design was no longer effective. The epitome of classic European cannon design was reached around 1480, with the design not changing much all the way until the 1750s. And it's in this time we also see defensive architecture change as a response to this formidable foe. Gone were the tall towers and straight walls of medieval forts, and in came the Bastion Fort, or Star Fort. Although not a new invention, these fortresses had low, sloped earthen banks called glacis. These were sloped on the outside towards any possible attacker, and made it difficult for cannon fire to seriously damage the citadel behind them. By creating these jutting bastions, the flanks or curtains of a fortress could be overseen, eliminating dead zones. Moats had proven themselves during medieval times and also found their way into bastion forts. In between the bastions, some forts would also have tenails, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. These defensive works provided extra protection for the curtain, where a postern gate or secondary gate could be hidden from sight. Excellent for sneaking unseen out of your fort to surprise the attackers. The more common ravelins are these detached outworks and would often sit in front of a curtain wall, further protecting these. Ravelins were so designed that they would split incoming forces. They would also have a very low wall or no wall at all on the citadel-facing side. That way, enemy forces could not find shelter within them. Other outworks were hornworks or crownworks, the latter one having one or more complete bastions itself. There were many variations, configurations, and ways of thinking that evolved over time. Bastion forts were often built using earth and brick, as brick does not shatter on impact the way stone does when shot with a cannonball. The first bastion forts were developed in Italy around the turn of the 16th century in response to the French invasion. Michelangelo used star forts in the defense of Florence, and it was from Italy that the practice spread, influencing fort design for another 300 years. Dutch architect Menno van Coehoorn and French military engineer Vauban further improved on the practice with many new additions and inventions. The design practice wasn't only applied to military positions, it was also used in the defensive works of cities. Famous examples such as Naarden in the Netherlands, Palmanova in Italy, and you can still see the defensive ring around the old city center of Nicosia in Cyprus. But were they effective? Well, centuries of use of these massive earthworks would suggest that yes, they were. Bastion forts and their design principles proved their use many times over the centuries. For instance, in the defense of Pisa in 1500. Often the medieval curtain walls were torn down, wide ditches were dug, and gently sloping walls created, usually made from earth, which was cheaper than brick. The city of Amsterdam built 26 bastions in the 17th century, and luckily they were never seriously tested, as apparently the maintenance required for such a massive piece of infrastructure was difficult, and the Amsterdam defensive works deteriorated quickly. You can still vaguely make out where these bastions were when looking at Amsterdam today. The Italian city of Siena even bankrupted itself to pay for its defenses in 1544. But with the advent of artillery and explosive shells, the bastion forts or star forts started to be replaced by the much simpler polygonal forts in the 19th century. And with the advent of tanks and airplanes in the 20th century, fortresses as a concept became more and more obsolete. The design principles behind bastion forts had an enormous impact on many European cities and landmarks. Aside from a number of pristine, preserved examples, you can also find traces of their use in cities today, such as Amsterdam, Vienna, Hamburg, Barcelona, and gorgeous Copenhagen, as well as former European colonial structures, such as the Dutch-built Jaffna Fort in Jaffna, Sri Lanka. Thanks to my patrons for making this video possible. Sign up at patreon.com if you want your name in the credits too. Or simply subscribe if you want to know more about our odd world and support the show that way. Thank you for watching. Till next time.